Thank you, moderator, and I want to thank the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, of course, the publicity department of the CPC Central Committee for inviting us. The question of democracy has been the most debated, the most used in recent times. It is generally a framework through which a society organizes itself. But how it functions is actually dependent on the institutions. And the key institution for understanding how democracy works is the state. And the question is, to understand how democracy works or the attitude of the state, we must interrogate the nature of the state, the character of the state, and how the institutions of the state evolves. Because if we do not take into account the institutions, these are the operational mechanisms for democracy. If we do not interrogate it, we will treat democracy in abstract. And in that way, we will not get a proper insight of whom it serves, at what particular point, and in what particular circumstances, at what particular historical epoch, and under what condition. Of course, if you look at the nature of the Chinese state, the evolution of the Chinese state, largely, of course, modern Chinese state largely influenced by Bolshevism. The Chinese Revolution along the line acquired its own character, and all the key institution of the state was developed in direct experience in the struggle for the new state, the new modern state of China. Of course, even at the start of the revolutionary process, it was largely influenced and directed by the Communist International, and the disaster that followed immediately after that, especially on the retreat of the Red Army, embarking on the Long March, was very palpable, that the part of Soviet-directed revolutionary struggle is not an option. And the iconic 1936 Xinyi Conference gave Chinese revolution its unique character. And the unique character of the Chinese state was the main defining moment in the evolution of the character of the state, the nature of the state. All the key institutions that we see today that serves China well are all developed in the historic process of founding the modern state. The first institution, of course, was the Chinese People Political Consultative Conference was founded. The United Front, the Mass Line, all these were all founded in the depth of the revolutionary process and developed along the line. And of course, the founding of Chinese modern state and all that. So the process of consultation did not fall from nowhere. The nature of the institution were all integral to the creation of Chinese modern state, and they were all developed in the process of mobilizing the people, mobilizing the masses. United Front, under the leadership of the Communist Party, in which a patriotic alliance of all Chinese people, demanding democracy, demanding complete control of their destiny. So the nature of the democracy of China today can only be understood within the process of these key mechanisms, the evolution of these key mechanisms, which are the institutions of China modern state. So if democracy did not take into account the institutions, the real practical instrument for implementing democratic process is the institutions. And if the institutions do not reflect the reality, the social character, the political character of the people, the history, then it will not. I give you one instance. In my country, in Nigeria, in Africa, we have all the elements of democratic practice. We have, in the 90s, we have end of military rule, and then we have multi-party democracy. There is regular elections. There is parliament. there is the presidency, there is the judiciary, rule of law. But I tell you, 30 years since that, we have more people are hungry, more people poverty, you have violent criminality, you have extremism, because the institutions of democracy did not evolve from within. They were all superimposed from without. So they did not enjoy the historic development within the people. The sentiment of the, because institutions are supposed to reflect the institution, the concerns of the people. It is supposed to process the concern of the people. It is only institution that processes the concern of the people that can genuinely give vent or give effect to democratic practice and democratic outcomes. In a situation where the institutions of the state, the institutions of the society do not aggregate the common aspiration, the historical experience of the people, there should be divergence. And in the context of divergence, democracy delivers nothing. You have all the trappings of democracy. You have everything, parliament, elected president, but in terms of deliverables, it comes to nothing. And that is the challenge in Africa. That is the more reason why we democratize. The more we democratize, the more social crisis is evident. The more social crisis is imminent. You have more people poor. You have more people out of job. You have, and the young people are responding by choosing extremism, the Boko Haram. Education is not wanted, Western education. Well, education is not wanted, not just Western education. So the point of the matter is for us to appreciate how democracy works. Each country will have to engage its own experience. And it is through the experience when you evolve your institution, because institutions are the key mechanism for administering democracy. Without it, democracy is abstract. It does nothing to improve people's livelihood, because if it does not deliver tangibles, if it does not deliver on quality of life of the people, like we have in Africa, we have entered a stage of what we call democratic recession in Africa, where we have all the major framework of modern Western democracy, but it delivers nothing. In my country, 209 million people. We have a president elected just 2 weeks ago by only 8 million people. People just didn't want to show up because what's the point? Every 4 years, you ask them to queue and thumb the ballot, and some few people sit in parliament. They could have more cars, they could have more houses, they can even have more wives. So what is the point of asking people? So this time around, very few people turned up to vote. We have a president of 2.3 million people elected only by 8 million persons. So in Africa, the challenge now is what people are calling democratic recession. Democracy is receding. Why will it not recede? Because the institutions is not homegrown. The institution does not reflect our sentiment. It does not carry our historic experience. It does not bear any resemblance of our shared and common sentiments. It's completely divorced. And of course, our friends, Americans, the British, they tell us this is excellent for us. So we are kingpin of democracy in the modern world. I've had the privilege of asking Canadian ambassador, can we exchange? You can have ours. You can have ours since it works for you. You can send all Canadians in Nigeria to enjoy our democracy, and then we all can relocate to Canada to enjoy your own democracy. If you think it's so wonderful. The question is, people must evolve the instrument of democracy, and you must appreciate the nature of the state. The nature and character of the state is the main determinant of the state attitude to democratic improvement, democratic practice. Even United States, of course, it is taken for granted that democracy, United States is the beacon of democracy. But people forgot it started with only property males, only heavily propertied males. Then women only have the vote in the 60s. Of course, the blacks never had until very recently. And how did United States become an exemplar of democracy? Because it simply organizes domination across the world. It simply organizes accumulates surplus on a global scale. With the surplus it accumulates on a global scale, it was able to completely provide some social harmony that ensures a semblance of democracy, a semblance of quietness. But with countries standing up, like China, the United States began to lose some lucrative outposts of its global accumulation of surplus. Up to today, it is still debated in the United States about who lost to China. It never occurred to them that Chinese simply took back their country. But the fact is, who lost China? Because China was a lucrative outpost in U.S. global accumulation of surplus. And with the loss of China in their own words, the contribution to enhancing the harmony of U.S. democracy got missing. The same thing with other countries. So the point remains that democracy for us in Africa has become a very serious challenge. In as much as it is what we cherish and what we would want, the fact remains that it does not, for now, deliver more result. There is a concern that people should re-examine the experience of others. Like we say in Africa, Chinese experience is not repeatable because it is uniquely Chinese. If you follow the trajectory of the evolution of their institutions and their modern state, but of course it offers a lot of lessons. It offers a lot of lessons because you must secure democracy by improving the material condition of the people. Because following the Cultural Revolution, the question is, what will China do next? Of course, the Chinese said, it is no longer class struggle. It is about the backwardness of the productive forces. We must create the material condition to build socialism. We must create the material condition to build democracy, people's democracy. And it took economic construction, modernization as the key. And 40 years, 50 years down the line, we've seen massive success in that field. So I think China's model of democracy has its appeal, but I believe it is also not simply repeatable by any people. So each people must find the best way, the best mechanism to advance its democratic aspiration, and that can only be done by the people themselves. The lesson of our meeting today, in my view, is that this discussion is an ongoing one. There will never be an end to it because democracy is always responding to new challenges, and therefore it is imperative to continually redefine it in the light of new reality. So this discussion, in my view, is just one in a series of many discussions we will continue to do to actually understand the process, the mechanism for not only securing democracy, but sustaining it in the interest of humanity. Thank you so much for listening.